And welcome in to another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. Super excited to be with you all today. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you're outside mowing the lawn, if you're just sitting at home with the kids this summer, whatever you're doing, thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend about the podcast because I know podcasts are better friends. I'm your host, Jay, and today I have an incredible guest with me, Ellie. Ellie is a mother of four, a narrative therapist who uses stories and somatics as intervention, and she does a lot of work with spiritual abuse, ADHD, and relationship issues. So welcome to the show, Ellie. Super excited to have you.
Thanks for having me on, Jay. Excited to talk to you.
Awesome. I'm excited to talk to you. I'm excited for this conversation we're going to have today. It's going to be a really good one. But before we dive in, I want to thank one of our sponsors at the top of the show here, Dad Bod Supply Company. As you can see, I'm pinked out. I'm all pinked out because you got to support your local girl, Dad. As the hat says, I would take it off so you can get a better visual of it, but the hair is kind of crazy. You may notice I shaved the beard, but I did not get a haircut. So I'm going to keep the hat on. But it's awesome, lightweight, super breathable. It's an athletic fit hat here. So it has this mesh lining in the back. So it's great for all your summer athletics, all your year-round athletics, everything you do outside, mowing the lawn, cutting the grass, going to the store, being hot outside, at the water park, at the pool, whatever you're doing with the kid. It's a great hat. It's an affordable hat, and it's super stylish. Literally, if you get this hat and you wear it, please add an extra 10 minutes to wherever you're going because you will get stopped repeatedly and ask them, dude, that's such a cool hat, nice hat, where'd you get it, kind of thing. Tell them that you got it because you listened to the Young Dad podcast, and then you went to Dad Bod Supply Company or Dad Bod Supply Co., which is linked down in the description of the show notes. And on top of that, you put in the promo code YoungDad15 and save 15%. So that's enough of the business today. Ellie, can you tell us a little bit about your platform and what inspires your work to this day?
Sure. So I am a co-host of the Phoenix Effect podcast, and we do narrative story work. Our themes are on belonging, purpose, and success. We like to have guests come on, tell a story about a time that they tried to belong or try to succeed or find their purpose and what that experience was like for them. And then we start to get a little deeper into their story and we start to make connections with how they grew up, where they learned to be in the world in a certain way. And it's just a unique way to learn more about yourself and to engage your nervous system differently than one-to-one therapy.
Very interesting. So what kind of led you into this path of therapy and doing the kind of work that you do now? What was kind of the starting point and what started this off for you in the very beginning?
Yeah, so I was a new therapist and trying to find my niche, right? They'd always tell you to focus in on one particular thing so people know who to go to and how you work. And I was listening to a different podcast and I'm like, I want to do it how he does it. And he said he recommended going to the Allender Center for training. And so I started my training with the Allender Center, and they have 3 levels of narrative-focused trauma care. And I just fell in love with it. It was different than anything I had experienced before, and I felt myself making huge shifts that I hadn't made. And I've been in and out of therapy for years with all different kinds of therapists. And this is by far my favorite way to change my brain.
Awesome. So for the listener that doesn't know, what is this narrative informed trauma care? Because I think a lot of people know what trauma informed care is. At least if you work in the mental health field, you know what trauma informed care is. But what is a narrative trauma informed care? What does that kind of look like, and what are some of the benefits of that, and how can it be used to benefit oneself?
Well, how the Allender Center does it is they have everyone write a story of harm that happened between the ages 4 to 18. And when we use the word harm, it doesn't have to be sexual abuse or some kind of major trauma. It can just be remarkable moments that really impacted you. And you bring that story to a group, you process with the group, and you receive care in the story the way you didn't the first time around when you were actually living it. And that can change something in your brain to receive the care. And also, we cannot tell our own stories accurately, and we need other people to help us tell a more true story. And we can talk more about what that might look like. But to have a more cohesive narrative really can majorly impact how you present in the world. And in the context of the group, we're also finding what your style of relating is. So when the harm happened in the story, your brain was rapidly making changes to figure out how can this thing never happen again. And so you start to adapt and change how you interact with people and the world in this new way. And that, if with enough repetition, that becomes your style of relating. And it now shows up in all areas of your life. And it can be the places where you get really stuck. And so if we can kind of go back, find out where did this style of relating, how was it born? And really working with it, you can start to have more flexibility in how you're showing up today in your relationships if there's something problematic happening.
Definitely. That's really cool. So explain that a little bit. Why is it so that we can't tell our own story accurately and we need that group to help fill in those parts that we have a hard time doing on our own?
Right. So when the story of harm was happening, we were young, and children, they have a very egocentric view, and they often make whatever's happening their fault. They turn on themselves, and so usually they are now carrying a lot of shame, and how they've made sense of the shame isn't quite accurate. And so by having other people speak into it, we can put shame where shame belongs.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I think that's 100% true. I see it in my own kids. I see it in the kids I work with every day. There's a lot of internalizing that kids do. It's automatic almost. That it's just automatic to, oh, I did it. It's my fault. I'm wrong. It's my fault kind of thing. And it's all automatically internalized. And then that internalized feeling then manifests itself into something worse at times. Especially for little boys, I see it a lot where it gets internalized on ourselves. I mean, I was that little boy where I internalized all the shame and all these feelings and all these things, and then they came out in big explosive outbursts of anger, and fighting, and to the point to where I got suspended from school. I would get in fights. I would punch kids. I would throw desks at kids. I would throw stuff at other kids. I would get in fights randomly because it was just everything. I just felt blame for everything, and I took it all upon myself. Those different parts of myself that I had to learn once I got into my 20s, and I did some very specific therapy. I did forgiveness therapy with a therapist. It was super powerful, but it kind of helped me do that same kind of thing. Helped me work through those like different narratives I had in my head, to where it's like, wait, I wasn't at fault for that. That wasn't my fault. That wasn't something I could control. I was 6 years old. I was a child. I couldn't control that my biological mother said she would send me a birthday present, but never did, kind of thing. Like, I can't control that. Like, that's not out of my control. But yet I internalized that at that time, and then I took it out on everybody else, kind of thing. So I think you're absolutely right. You have to put that shame where that shame belongs, and it's an internal thing to kind of figure that out, which makes sense that you have to have other people to kind of do that, because you need that outside perspective kind of looking at you to almost question you in sorts, to help you work through that. Because if you question yourself, you're going to, obviously, your brain's going to say, put it back on yourself. It's still your fault. You still did it wrong. You still did something. So being able to work through it with a group, I think that's really powerful and really cool.
Right. And that narrative that you formed, that everything was your fault, if it goes unaddressed, it's going to show up in every area of your life today. So it sounds like you have a dad platform, right? So if anything happens in your parenting, and if things are going to happen in everybody's parenting, your immediate narrative without somebody working with you would be, well, this is my fault that my kid did this or did that. And we can become highly reactive to our children if our immediate inner dialogue is, well, this must be my fault.
100%. And I think that's very true for men and for dads. It's very easy for us to take on that blame, to take on that responsibility. It's very natural. It's very easy to say, yep, I messed up. I got to own it. I got to fix it. We're fixers. It's just how us men, primarily here in the United States, where my audience is based, we're how we're being raised for generations, is that I broke it. I got to fix it. I gotta fix it. I gotta fix it. I gotta fix it. Fix, kind of thing. But now the boys that I'm seeing in the program, they don't have those skills to fix it. Versus my generation, that, granted, yes, they're limited skills, but we have skills to fix it. Well, now the boys that I work with and I see between coaching and different church programs and working at the place I work, I see they just don't have like the skills to fix it. They're kind of just coddled and it's done for them. Like a lot of things are just done for them and they don't really get the chance to do it. There's not as much do. It's just done for them and they get used to it being done for them and then they where they're going to grow up and they're going to have no clue what to do kind of thing. So it's like it's a drastic shift to where it's like, okay, us fathers right now, we weren't really coddled. We were taught how to just fix it, do the thing, get past it, move on, to where now we're trying to overcorrect it majorly and by just doing it for our boys. And we're not helping them really learn how to do these things. And I see it across boys and girls, especially just like our youth in general, is that us parents were just doing it for them because we didn't have it done for us. So we're just going to overcorrect and do all the things for them. But now they're going to grow up and they're not going to have the skills to do it themselves.
Right. And their narrative could be, I can't do things.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of
Takes away
I can't.
their confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's a big confidence issue with kids is that they don't feel capable of doing things. And so then when they are able to do something, it's a very poor choice, I guess you can say. The choices they make are, I think, probably not the best ones where let's say they go to college or university, they get involved with something, a program or something because they finally have like the freedom to do something or to get into something or to make those choices on their own and they're told, oh, you can do this. So they're full-fledged, okay, I can do it kind of thing. So then it has the opposite drastic effect and it's flipped versus they don't have a strong sense while they're younger of, okay, I can and can't do certain things. Things are right and wrong versus kind of thing. I'm not perfect. I do struggle. I am human. I do have these flaws and these are my strengths. These are my weaknesses kind of thing. And I understand those. Where now it's just like, well, I don't know what my strengths are. I also don't know what my weaknesses are because I've always been told I'm great at everything. So it's a very fine balance that we have to deal with as parents, especially as dads, because we want to be real with our kids. We have to be real with our kids. We can't just lead them to thinking like you're great at something when you might not be. Sorry, kid. You are great at this other thing. So
Right. That balance of filling them with the confidence that they're a good person,
yes.
even if they can't do this or they mess up here or make mistakes. Right. It's that balance of they can accept feedback because they have this inner core of they really like themselves. They really see themselves as a good person.
Yeah. And I think that's huge, that confidence in that good person piece. Because I've always told myself, I just want to raise good, productive members of society. When they're older, when they're out of the house, I want to know that they are going to be good, productive members of society. That they're going to respect other people, no matter their beliefs, color, their background, whatever. They're just going to be respectful. They're going to be kind. They're going to be honest. They're going to be loving. They're going to be just good human beings. That's all I really, at the end of the day, care about. I don't care what they end up doing for a career. I know if they have those values, then they're going to attract those same people into their lives. Because that's who they're going to look for. They're going to understand that, oh, well, I have these set of values. I'm kind. I'm honest. I'm loyal. I'm grounded. I have these central core beliefs. I'm a good human. I'm going to look for other good humans. And then they're going to attract those good humans into their life. And they're going to be able to cut the bad humans out of their life a lot quicker and make those adjustments. So that's honestly one of my big goals as a parent, is to just raise good humans. Because I feel like there's not enough good humans being raised.
Right. I hear you. And I think part of the struggle to get to that I'm a good person is because there's so much shame messaging that's happening internally for a boy as they're growing up. And so it is hard to hold on to that I'm still good when I'm feeling so much shame about all the ways that I'm feeling where I've missed the mark. And it's often because of how they are being parented by their parents. They're kind of getting the same message that those parents got. And it's kind of this generational pattern of not knowing a way to talk to a child about how they're feeling without shaming them because they're so caught up in their own stuff, right? And so they're shaming the child when it's really more about their own shame. And so we kind of have this whole big pause we all need to do where we deal with our shame as parents so that we can show up and be there for our children when they're going through something hard.
Definitely. And your parents, as parents, our kids, they really need us. They need us to show up in those moments and be there for them and not make it worse. They don't need fuel added to the fire. They need your help putting out the fire because they can't put out that fire on their own. They don't know how. They don't have the ability. They don't have their brain literally isn't developed to put out the fire on their own. Like it's not a matter of if they want to or not, because they want to, they just can't because their brain doesn't have those things developed in it across their ages, especially for boys. So they're not going to have that developed until they're in their 20s. It's going to take a long time for them to get there. Girls, it's going to be a bit sooner. It's a bit easier with girls. I'm a girl dad, so I can speak to that fully. That it's a bit easier with girls. They get a little bit easier, but it still takes a lot. Like sometimes they just can't do certain things because of their age and their stage of development, and that's okay. That's where I come in as a parent, as the adult, because I fully have those parts of my brain open and unlocked and developed, so then I can help them on these parts that they can't. I fill that gap for them essentially because they can't fill it themselves.
Right. I'm curious, Jay, as a man, you would know better than I would, but the messages that we give boys is things like don't cry. And so they're learning to kind of already start to block access to a lot of their emotional range. And so it can be hard to emotionally mature if they're getting the message of, I'm not supposed to do these things. Does that feel true?
Yes, I would say that's still true today, unfortunately. I think the message that needs to change here is making sure that we teach our boys that it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to express your emotion. But we have to find ways that do it in a healthy way. You can't express it with your fists. That's not going to help anybody. If you want to express it with your fists, if your boy is just automatic for some reason, maybe you as a dad, maybe even the mom, maybe you guys have that kind of automatic quick trigger and it's physical. You need a physical outlet. Your son's just like that. Okay. If he needs to get it out through his fist or through his feet or through his body, there's plenty of martial arts programs out there. Find him one of those. Get him that outlet, a safe outlet for that. Get him a safe outlet so then he can get that all out. He can express all of that emotion through that. If it's drawing and something more creative and artistic, provide him the supplies to do that. Find the healthy outlet for him to be able to express himself. And let him know it's okay to express himself. If he wants to cry, let him cry. It's good for him. He needs it. He needs it. He needs to cry. I honestly can't remember the last time I cried because I was thinking about it just a couple of days ago. I'm like, when was the last time I cried? Because I heard an ad. There's this ad going around some of the podcasts I listen to. There's this podcast called A Really Good Cry, and I keep hearing ads for it on Spotify. And I'm like, man, when was the last time I cried? I really don't know. I've been trying to rack my brain for that, but it's been a minute. But I think the message is don't tell them that it's not okay to cry because it's totally okay to cry. You need to help them find the outlets that are healthy that they can express their emotions through. If it's through their fists, great. Find an outlet for that. If it's through creation or whatever, find an outlet for that. If it's through just sitting and stewing, then just let them sit and stew. Put them outside so that they can still get fresh air and those vitamins and things like that. So they get used to, okay, you're training them essentially. Okay, when I'm feeling these things, I go outside and I calm down. I don't just go in my room and stew on it. I go outside and I calm down. Put them in an environment that's going to be conducive to what their needs are, what their unique individual needs are. There are times where you have to tell them to be tough, where you have to tell them to tough it out, kind of thing. Because maybe it's something that they need to be tough about. I think there's a big difference in being tough and saying to a young man or a young boy, saying, "Hey, just be tough right now. You got this. Get through it. You know, let it out a little bit later. Just be tough right now," kind of thing. So them hearing that, they can know, like, okay, I got to be tough right now. But I can let it out later. Because maybe you don't have access to their tools. Maybe you don't have access to the things that they need. You say, "Hey, bud, I know we don't have those things right now that you really need. Let's be tough right now, and then let's go and, in a little bit we'll go and draw or something, or we'll go for a walk so that you can get it out. You gotta be tough right now." So just being tough in the face of all those different adversaries and things that come your way as a man and as a young boy. Just be tough. I think that's the message it has to change to, is be tough and then find your outlet.
Yeah, I think what you're offering your children is so beautiful. I think where most of us get tripped up is it's really hard to tolerate our children's emotions if we haven't learned to tolerate them within ourselves. If we didn't have that kind of model growing up that it was okay to feel, we can feel very triggered by our child's feelings and immediately want to shut it down. And so taking them for a walk, letting them know it's okay, it's really hard as parents to get in that space if we haven't learned to calm ourselves down when we are feeling dysregulated by our child's dysregulation.
Definitely. And I think sometimes if that is you and you need to get to that point, it's totally okay for you to put them to send them to a room, to send them to a space that's like separate from you so that you don't engage with it and blow it up. Because when you engage with it and add fuel to the fire, what happens to a fire when you add fuel to it? It gets a lot bigger. It gets a lot bigger. And we don't want the fire to get bigger. We want to help put the fire out. But if you are at a point where you're adding fuel to it versus putting it out, then that's a really good time where you need to send them to their room. Maybe you need to go to your room. Maybe you need to just wash the dishes. Maybe you need to go outside for a minute, get some fresh air, take some deep breaths, or whatever it is, whatever coping skills that you have as an adult. But at the same time, I think a lot of parents, we forget that we want our kids to cope with their emotions and to use coping skills, but where yes, they could be in therapy and working on their coping skills for an hour a week, right? That's not a lot of time. They need to be able to practice at home and use those coping skills at home, but they need it modeled for them to know how to use those coping skills. So as parents, do you even have your own coping skills? Do you even have things that you do that are healthy coping mechanisms? Because if your coping skill, and there's no harm in it, if your coping skill is to just go outside and take a smoke, well, your kid can't really go outside and smoke. So they don't have that ability to do that. If your coping skill is to drink, then maybe that's not the best example because yes, they could drink water or something, but they know what you're drinking and why you're drinking it. So then again, we go back to this whole shame circle. Well, when I act up, daddy drinks. When daddy drinks, it's my fault. I'm the reason dad drinks, kind of thing. So it just all spirals back, or I'm the reason that mom keeps smoking. All these things just keep circling. So it's a weird cycle that we're kind of caught in here because it all kind of comes back to that shame that you mentioned there at the top. It's like a shame cycle. Oh, it's a cycle of shame that just happened and is repeated over and over and over again. Um, so it's hard to kind of get out of that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really good insight. And how I like to get out of that as a narrative therapist is, let's say you do kind of get into it with your kids. Just taking a moment to reflect, what was it about this interaction that set me off? What did I notice in my body when my child did this? And if you can get in tune with your own body, the next question is, what does this remind me of when I was younger? And then we
Yeah,
can kind of start to get some traction.
I agree. I think that's one way that I phrase that, and I phrase that on my website and different things that I've done. There's this workshop that I created once upon a time. It's been about a year now since I actually hosted the workshop, but it was a well balanced parent diet workshop kind of thing. One of the big parts of that, and it's on my website, it's on the podcast. You can go back and just search. It's all the bonus content. It's a 12-part series, but one of the parts of that series is why. Like ask yourself why, and being able to stop and reflect and ask yourself why. So being able to go back and connect that down and down and down and down. Okay, why am I feeling this? Kind of like emotional digging, if you will. Like if you had a shovel and you took it, some little blocks and a little guy with a shovel. This is actually something I created as an intervention that I use sometimes. I have a little shovel guy. He's like laminated, little animated shovel dude holding a character, and I just have blocks on a piece of paper, and we use a vis-a-vis or an expo marker. And the first emotion at the top is whatever emotion that they might feel. And then we dig into that next layer underneath. Move the little shovel guy down, next layer underneath. What's there? Okay, let's move down again. Let's keep going down. Let's keep going down. Okay, why do you think that's there? Okay, cool. Let's move down more. I think we can go deeper. Okay, cool. Let's go deeper kind of thing. And then so just being able to do that yourself with yourself and ask yourself why. Okay, why am I feeling this? Okay, why do I feel like that? Okay, why do I feel like that? Okay, why do I feel like that? And just be able to try to get to that root cause, some root cause analysis. Men are very logical. We're very logical creatures. Root cause analysis is a very logical thing. So root cause analysis yourself. Okay, that's the root cause of why I'm feeling this in this moment. And that can be very healing. That's something that very much opens up. That's very much something that I learned through doing forgiveness therapy for myself, was being able to go back and question myself over and over and over again to get to that root cause.
Yeah. Now I would be curious, do you find that a lot of the men have shame about whatever core feeling that was coming up because they've been conditioned that these feelings are not okay?
100%. I would say majority, because just like you said, we were told and we were taught that they weren't okay. We were told and we were taught that these feelings weren't okay. They we were yeah, just it's just that we were told that they weren't okay, so there is going to be some shame and some guilt around those. It's going to be hard for us to forgive ourselves for those, because it's like, whoa, 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 wait, hold on, back up. That's still on me. That's still my fault in some way, shape, or form. Even though we can clearly look at, you just look through it. You just went down to the roots of it. You just dug all the way down, bottom layer. It's not your fault. That's really hard for a man to hear years later, because again, we've internalized it for the last 10, 15, 20, however many years. We've internalized it for this long duration of time. So we just know that things are fault. So then everything else we do is in a reaction for that. Like, I see it personally for myself, to give a personal example, is when I'm in my second marriage now. I've been divorced once, married again now. One thing that I'm still trying to kind of get myself out of the thinking is that when I maybe don't do something right or something, I feel this need to overcorrect and make up for it, to say like I'm sorry, and to like get like forgiveness in some way, shape, or form. And so it's like, okay, I messed up. Let me buy you flowers, chocolate. Let me do all these things, kind of overcorrect and overshower you with love, kind of thing. And then I'm really trying really hard to break that, to where it's like, okay, I need to do something. Okay, maybe I just need to do more just because flowers, to help kind of untrain that. Or maybe it's just an extra random spontaneous gift here and there, kind of thing. Or maybe it's, I need a plan to do these certain things different, to kind of break those patterns in my head, because these things aren't just meant for like to say I'm sorry and to make up. They're meant for all the time, kind of thing. So just it's a really weird example here, but the point of it is that that comes from a place to where, as a child, I always felt like when I did something wrong, I had to do something to really make up for it. Like, I had to do something really big to get forgiveness from those around me, to say I'm sorry and to get your forgiveness, and I had to really show you that I actually loved and cared about you, kind of thing. That's just kind of how I was taught. And so
Right, that
now when something like,
conditioned response to be in
exactly, so
connection with people.
exactly, so now I see it like in my everyday relationship. When I mess up, I like really like feel bad. I'm like, oh crap, I messed up. How am I gonna make up for this? How am I gonna how am I gonna make that right? How am I gonna right this wrong, kind of thing? When a simple apology is really all that I need to do. I don't need to go big and do these big, huge expressions and to do all these things. But but in my head, it's like, okay, well, you need to do something big right now to make up for this. You really messed up. It could be a little thing. I'll feel like it was a big mess up. It could be, and then that leads to my reaction as well. Like, I'll react a certain way. Maybe I'll be more reactive for a certain situation at a certain set of time, because I'll just feel like, man, what I'm doing is not enough. I don't know what else I can do. Like, okay, let me do more. Let me, do more to kind of make it up to you, kind of thing. So
Like an anxiety of this isn't going to be okay until I have really gone over the top with this.
exactly. But then what that gets me into a cycle of is, okay, well, what happens next time? Now I got to go even bigger next time. And then the next time I got to do more and do more. Because then if I go lower or not the same, then I'm going to feel that same thing. I didn't do enough. You're still going to be upset. You're still going to be mad at me, kind of thing. So it's just that kind of cycle there. So
Right. And it's the younger you that needs that attention, right? Of feeling like I can never do enough to make this right. And
Hmm.
so noticing that part of yourself and being able to soothe and comfort that younger part, that can lessen the anxiety so you can show up the way that you would want to.
Exactly. And it's not even fully just like the parts of me that weren't there. It's the parts that like I also wasn't given as well by like women in my life and whatnot. By because I wasn't raised by my biological mother. I was raised by my grandmother. So it's a very different dynamic there. But it's like there's part of that's like seeking that validation and seeking those different parts where it's like, okay, you're that like female, you're not my wife's not my mother figure because that's weird, but like she's that female figure in my life, like a constant female figure in my life now. It's like, okay, how do I just want that validation that I did something good, that I did good things because I haven't gotten that consistently throughout my life kind of thing. So it's just kind of like
Right.
that weird kind of thing where it's not like even something I did, it's something that I wasn't given that now also, and a lot of men, we don't men don't understand like where does this come from. I know where it comes from me 100%. I can point these different things out to a different degree and say, hey, this comes from here. I feel that way because of that. While it's not an excuse, I understand where it's coming from, and I know that okay, now is the time for me to kind of deal with this and to kind of work on this little part of me. Maybe I need to offer myself some grace. Maybe I need to offer myself some forgiveness and wrap myself like little me on the inside, wrap myself in like a warm little hug to help myself feel better. So
Yeah, that's good insight. And I think you're so right that your template for how you understand women was set up a long time ago. It wouldn't really matter who you married, right? You would still have that young part of you that's looking and showing up and interacting with women a certain way, just really needing to know, am I loved? Am I okay?
exactly. And so it's something that, is something I'm personally working on, and something that I know I have to work on myself. So, but let's transition here. Enough about me. Um, let's talk about you, Ellie. So you're a mom of four. Um, you mentioned when in a questionnaire that I send out that being a parent to you is everything and it gives you the greatest opportunities and challenges to do your own work. What can you expand on this a little bit for me?
Sure. I would say each child brings something different to the table. And where I find myself having big feelings or big reactions, that's my cue of where I need to do my own work so that I can show up as a parent more regulated and be able to stay attuned and stay in connection with my child. So every time that something big happens in me as I'm parenting, I have an opportunity to grow and develop as a person.
I love that. I love that.
I can give you an example if that would make it more
Please,
interesting.
please.
Yeah. Okay, sure. Well, let's say that I see my oldest son kind of putting down one of his younger brothers. When that happens, Jay, I get like very activated in my body. Like I feel like something like my chest gets tight. I get very rigid. I might start to get hot and I want to immediately dive in. And if I were feeling reactive, I could potentially say something very shaming to my oldest son. I could call him a bully. We don't treat people that way. So he could start to internalize, I guess I'm a bad kid if I did this thing. And then he could start to take that on as, I guess I'm not a very good person if I treat people this way. But if I can notice, wow, I get really activated when I see bully type of behaviors, I wonder what that's telling me about what needs attention in me. Because I remember what it's like to have somebody bully me and to feel like I had no power. And can I nurture that young part in me that never was seen and validated when she was scared, when somebody was yelling at her, when somebody was trying to make her feel small? Can I go be with that younger part? So the next time my oldest son wants to go at it with his brother, which is his way of showing love. They both have ADHD, and so they actually get quite stimulated arguing with each other. And so I kind of have to leave them to it at times, but I can enter into the conversation without shaming anybody for for it. If I just don't want to listen to it, I can invite them to go outside and I can remind them ways that we can talk to each other. But I'm going to interact with him very differently rather than a very shaming approach if I've done my work.
I love that. I think that's important because it's very easy, especially to kind of flip that into like the male perspective a little bit. It's very easy for us dads, especially that are being dads right now of our children, because we all kind of grew up in a time where our dads are very much that opposite, where it's very much that reaction. I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna smack you. I'm gonna smack you around. I'm gonna spank you. I'm gonna do all these things, just right off the bat. And it is that very much that shaming, that quick to accuse, quick to think, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing that kind of thing. You're doing all these things wrong. Stop doing them and do the opposite kind of thing. Or, hey, don't do that, do this kind of thing. Oh, but why? Because I said so. Oh, okay. I'll do that because you said so, I guess, because I don't want to get spanked. I don't want the belt again. So I'm going to do the thing you told me not to do, or do the thing you told me to do. So there's like a weird, excuse me, there's like a weird demographic of like shame and like fear almost at the same time, to where it's very easy for us to kind of quickly snap and be like, hey, you're bullying your younger sister right now. You're bullying your younger brother. That's a bully type of behavior. And it's very easy for us dads to kind of, we mean well. We mean to get to that point where you're at, to where we want to naturally, we want, our intention behind it is to say like, hey, don't do that, or, take it outside, or let's talk to each other this way kind of thing. Our intention is that we want to say something like that, but our instant reaction and how our brains are trained is like, hey, you're being a bully to your younger sister right now. That's not cool. We don't bully in this house. We treat each other with kindness, and it's not cool to take the lollipop or the thing from your sister's hand, because that's super rude, or to take the lip gloss, that's messed up. And so we mean to say, hey, is that kind behavior? Is that nice behavior? Is that something you would want done to you? And try to flip that narrative and make it more of an open discussion, and to talk about it that way, or to send them outside if you just don't want to hear it. But we don't
Right.
have
It's
that like
instilling
in
that
here to do it.
belief. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say it's that opportunity to instill the belief they're a good person, but we want to correct the behavior, right? And if we come at them in a place of reactivity, we could have them receive the message that the problem is who they are as a person. But when we can come at them regulated, it's the message, no, you're a good person. It's this behavior that needs a little bit of work.
Yeah, 100%. And it's hard. It's really hard for a lot of men to get there, to get to that point, to have that belief about themselves. Because even today in 2024, dads just aren't encouraged to do that, to be that kind of role model kind of thing. It's still very much like a fun and playful, while also being the disciplinary and authoritarian as well. Like but then just a little tiny bit, it's like, if I had to put it into like a number to help my fellow men understand kind of what I feel like it is right now, I would say it'd be 50% playful and fun, be 40% authoritarian and the disciplinary for your kid, but then just be about 10%. If you can get about 10%, then that's like amazing, great job, like you're world's best dad kind of thing, of being that like emotional kind of like person like for your kid. But then put the other 90% of all that onto their mother. Put the other 90% of that emotion onto their mother. Put the other 50% of, those other things onto the partner. So all those big gaps go to the other side. Which is hard, because our kids need strong male role models in their lives. They really need strong male role models in their lives to be able to be successful. I fully believe that every child needs some kind of really strong male father figure of some type, whether it's a very strong grandpa that they spend time with, an uncle. Ideally, it's their dad, but ideally, that's not the best situation for everybody. Some dads will bounce out early before the kid's even born. I'm not one to judge. If that's your choice, that's your choice. I'm not gonna, hey, that's your choice. You made that choice. You had your reasons for it. I'm gonna respect your choice, kind of thing. I'm not about that. I'm not gonna about shaming someone for the choices that they make. It's their choice. It's their life. It doesn't affect me or bother me in no way, shape, or form. But it's important for our children to have these male role models, because even that 10%, if 10% is all you can do, that 10% can make a world of difference. Hearing it from a male role model, a male influence, a male father figure, whatever it is, hearing it from that perspective for a child is just so beyond different, because there's some, I don't know how to like phrase it or what to call it, but there's like the mom fatigue a little bit for kids, to where they're so used to hearing it from mom, maybe it loses its zest a little bit, kind of thing. Because I know it's more often than not, especially with my kids, even in a situation that my wife will tell them something, because they're so used to hearing it from me, because I've been their main parent for the last 3 years. So now I'm like, hey, you tell them this. And they kind of have the fatigue with me from hearing it all the time. But then they hear it from her and they're like, whoa, yeah, that's true. That's true, kind of thing. It can be opposite in traditional roles, to where they kind of get burnt out hearing it from mom. It's like, yeah, mom, I know, I get it. But then dad says it to you. It's like, oh, yes, dad, yeah, 100%, yeah, no, yeah, I get it, 100%. Yeah, you right, kind of thing. So it's just kind of that dynamic shift.
Yeah. I wonder, Jay, do you think it would benefit dads to also have older male role models, even if they've kind of missed that window as a child? Is that something like as a resource if they're having a hard time showing up for their kids?
100%. I don't think, I know every man needs to have some kind of relationship with other men. Not in like that way, but like in a way that's like supportive and constructive. Because men get men, women get women. More naturally, of course. I would assume, because it's the same for me, for you, it's probably easier for you to work with women than it is to work with men, because the minds work similarly. And same for me. Like, I get working with boys and men a lot better than I get working with girls, because I understand how these brains work. Because man brain is very simple. Very simple. It's a big warehouse of nothingness with tons of shelves, like those big metal rackings, and every rack has shelves of boxes, and all the boxes are side by side, but all of them have about this much gap in between each box, so none of the boxes ever touch. We walk into our warehouse through the same entrance every single time. There's only one entrance and there's one exit. We walk in, we get on our forklift or whatever power equipment we have to drive us around, and we go to our one box. We take that one box off the shelf, we put it down, we open it, we play with it, we close it, we put it back, and then we do that all day long. And then when it's time to leave, we get it back on our cart, we make sure everything's go, we turn the lights off, and we drive out, and we park in the same spot we always park, and then we walk out of the warehouse until it's time to come back in and get another box. And that's man brain for you. It's very much into a spot, to a thing, do the thing, out of the thing, and move on to the next thing, kind of thing. Our boxes don't touch. We don't mix boxes at the same time. It's always one box and then the next box. That can move very quickly, but primarily it's one box. Let's move to the next box, to the next box, to the next box. When, for me at least, how I see it and how what makes sense in my brain is that women and girls' brains, girls and women's brains are a big spider web. But when you zoom in on the spider web, you see all the little tiny spider webs within the spider web. And then you zoom in even further, and it's even more complicated and intricate. And then you have a little lightning bolt running across this spider web at all times. And then it's just like bouncing around. And it makes sense in that brain, but a man sees that and it's like, there's no pattern, there's no repetition, it's just kind of there, then there, then there. These lines never intersect, they don't touch, they all kind of work together, but against each other at the same time. So that's kind of how I explain the difference in brain patterns to most people, because that's what's like, oh, most men like that, 100%. My brain definitely how it works like that, and they'll be like, yeah, that's definitely how my daughter's or my wife's brain works as well, kind of thing. Uh, so it's important to have those male influences, even if it's older, maybe it's same age, maybe it's a little bit younger, whatever it is. Have those same age like peers, role models, and people in your lives, because they're so important. And if that means that you don't have it, you need to go find it. Guess what? I guarantee there's some old men down at your local nursing home, old people community that would love to share some stories and some wisdom with you, that would love to company, that would love to talk to you, to get to know you, because they don't got nothing else to do all day. They would love the company. They would love to share their wisdom. They would love to share their story. Or even if that means reconnecting for yourself with, if the situation permits, connect with your dad more. Um, like my dad, this is a perfect example. My dad's not a baseball fan at all. I'm the biggest baseball fan in the world. I love baseball. Baseball's life. Um, we're from Oakland, California, the hood. We just got a new Pioneer League baseball team, the Oakland Ballers. The park that they played at was a park that we played soccer at and played sports at when we were kids. And my dad called me Friday night. I was at the movies, and then Saturday, so yesterday in the morning, finally called him back after I was back home. And he's like, "Yo, did you know about this?" Like he was so excited to like share like something baseball with me because like he knows that like that's something I'm passionate about. That's a relationship that we didn't have until I was like 15. And now it's been 15, 16 years of having that relationship to get to this point to where it's like he was excited to call me about baseball, which I thought was just like, this is so cool. Like he's calling me about baseball. And he's like, yeah, they're playing at this park right around the corner from the house. Like it's like a 10-minute walk from the house, and it's like super cool. And like they redid it. It looks really great. Like you got to come down. Like it's so cool. And it's just like, I'm just like, this is so cool. Like this is everything I ever wanted. Yes, it took until I was almost 30, but hey, it's super worth it because we have it now, kind of thing. And so it's just cool to see how that dynamic shifts. So if it's connecting with your dad, cool. If it's connecting with an uncle, you're like, man, I Uncle John, he always got me when I was a kid. Maybe I should just call him and talk to him a little bit. Um, and I think the biggest part of this that's a roadblock for men is like, how do I ask someone to be there for me? I just want them to kind of be there for me. Well, they can't be there for you unless you ask them to be there for you. Someone can't help and support you if they don't know how to help and support you. You have to kind of communicate those things. Say, hey, I've been struggling in this aspect, or I've been working on this part of me, or I've been doing this thing, and I realize I need more male influences for me. I know we were really close when I was a kid and kind of fallen off, but I would love to reconnect and talk weekly if that's something you have the bandwidth for and you're able to do for me, kind of thing, or just talk and have you as an outlet for myself, kind of thing, and vice versa. Um, be willing to offer what you're asking for as well, because maybe Uncle Tony needs it too. When you call him, maybe he needs it, and it's something that can be a blessing to both of you at the same time. So yeah, I think that's a very kind of how you do about it, but I think it's an absolute, it's a need, it's a must.
Yeah, I like what you're doing here. I think there's so much ambivalence over need. It feels vulnerable to say I have a need for a male role model. And what you're doing is giving everybody permission to say it's okay to need that. You can ask.
Yeah, you 100% need it. There's no doubt about it. We need each other. We're humans. We come from packs. We come from, if you believe in evolution, it's not my belief, but we evolved from monkeys and gorillas and packs. If you watch Planet of the Apes, guess what? They live in villages. They live in packs, kind of thing. That's a pack mentality. We need each other to survive. We play on each other's strengths. We all do different things to support our community. Look at your local little league. Your local little league wouldn't be able to survive without the volunteers that it has, without the resources and community that it has to be able to thrive and to support those kids and teach them how to play baseball, between volunteer coaches and things like that. That wouldn't exist if certain people didn't have the skill set to do that kind of thing. And so everything exists because of some form of community. So being able to find where you can fit in that community and also have that community to help you get out there and support your community. So what are you bringing into yourself to fill you up so that you can go out and do something beneficial for those around you? So it's like a whole kind of, sorry, there's a lot of carbonation in this drink. What are you doing to be able to help with that? So I guess
Yeah,
the
I
other
think
part
that's
here,
why
like
I enjoy story group, right? Is because we need each other. We need the connection.
100%, and that connection is important. You got to have that connection. And I guess speaking of connection, I know you work with through relationships and relationship issues for men and for women in these like relationships, marriages, things like that. What are I like to end the shows. Let me just repreface this. I like to end the shows on with tips and tricks, just to make sure people stay for the whole thing because this is where like the good stuff really comes out. But there's been so much good stuff this podcast. I mean, we kicked it off. We were 5 minutes in, and we were already deep into it. Um, so the last 45 minutes have been deep for the listeners, and I hope you truly benefited from this conversation. So before we get to like the tips and tricks and some of those tips and tricks questions, I'm going to ask you. Let me just give a second shout out here to another sponsor. So I'm going to back myself up before I go forward because I can very easily jump all over the place. I also, much like your children, have ADHD. So I want to give a shout out to the June app. That's JOON app. You can find that linked in my link tree, description of the show, wherever you find my social media. The June app. It's an amazing app for behaviors, for routines, for habits, for all these things. It's great for children with, since we mentioned a couple of times, with children with ADHD, the big one, to help them build routine, consistency, things like that. It mixes a video game and it mixes behavior management, routine management, things like that, all into one beautiful, awesome platform to where you as a parent, you have full control over this. You put in the things that you want them to do and the habits that you want them to build. You give them tasks and they earn coins based on the task, and these coins they can use in the game to help with taking care of their doters. They're like their little pets. So it's kind of like Tamagotchis, but in 2024. It's really cool. It's a cool concept. And they earn their coins, they earn their things, and they can play games with the apps that they have to earn their coins for. The only way they earn coins is by doing the things that you assign them. But the other part of that is just because they say they did something, it goes back to parents for approval. And the parent has to go and then check to make sure it's done. So if it's done poorly, guess what? You can dock some of those coins off. If it's done this like amazingly well and it's better than expectation, you can add coins and reinforce that positive behavior in the moment. So it's a great all-around tool. I want to say almost more than a million families and over 10,000 therapists are using the June app now. I'm part of both those demographics, so it's great. Highly recommend it. You can go to the June app and then you put in the code YoungDad. It'll save you some money off your annual subscription. And you can try for absolutely for free by following the links in the show in the description. So without further ado, Ellie, can you share some of those like tips or I don't know, I said Allie, I meant to say Ellie, I'm sorry. Ellie, can you share some of those like relationship tips and things that you have from working with relationships?
Sure. I would say become an expert in your partner's story. And when you see them acting in ways that may feel confusing for you or disproportionate to a situation, get curious because it may very well be it has nothing to do with you and it has everything to do with their story.
I love that. And then how about when it comes to like reconnecting with yourself? What can be really helpful for a parent, a mom, or a dad, even at just an individual level, to help them reconnect with themselves?
Oh, that's a great question. I love somatic practices. It is feels like torture for someone with ADHD. I have it too, Jay. I might need that app myself. But to sit and be still and to learn to reconnect to your body, even if it's only for 5 minutes a day, just checking in with how does it feel to have my back on the chair? How does it feel to have my hips? Do they feel like they're floating or they're pulled to the ground? Do I feel grounded and centered? And just kind of how does it feel temperature wise? Where do I notice pressure? Just being in your body can be very centering and very calming. A lot of the time we're very much in our head.
100%. I think a coping skill that can go along with that, that's very beneficial, is the five senses to help someone with ADHD with that. I think that's a really good coping skill for someone with ADHD. You go through all five of your senses, five things, and you can do them in any order, really, whatever you're most comfortable with. Five things you can hear, four things you can touch, three things you can see, two things you can smell, and one thing you can taste in that moment to kind of help you bring you back a little bit because it keeps your mind working in different areas and it activates all your senses, which is maybe what you need is just a quick little stimulation burst of your senses to kind of activate them all and then to kind of let them all go at the same time through that. Let's see here. And then what if you had to give one, maybe two pieces of all-encompassing advice, and I know this is a big question here, so think about it for a second. All-encompassing advice to, let's say, a young mom or a young dad thinking maybe 20 to 25, like very young, very new to parenting. That's just very, very new, and they're just already overwhelmed. It's been a day, and they're overwhelmed already. Thinking, I can't do this. This is going to be too hard. I'm too young for this. What is a couple pieces of advice that you have for those young parents?
Yeah, I would say be kind to yourself. Your children do not need you to be the perfect parent. They just need you to be able to attune to them emotionally. And when you miss it, you just repair it and you're good. Let yourself off the hook for all the mistakes you will make. We're all going to do it. So be nice to yourself. If you're going to make mistakes, be a soft place to land for yourself. That you're okay.
I love that. And then how about for the young couple that just had a child? They're very young. Let's say they're both 20, in that 20 to 25 range. Very young, a whole life ahead of them. Just had a baby. Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. What is a piece of advice for them?
Wow. First off, that's like the hardest time for a couple. So pat yourselves on the back for staying in it when it's hard. Ask for help wherever you can get it. Let people know that you need support. If you can, get a copy of John Gottman's Bringing Baby Home, or one of Gottman's workshops that specifically talk to how to be in a relationship with your new baby.
I love that. I think that's awesome. I'll find that and I'll link it for you guys in the description below. So just go down below and I'll find something for you for that. Ellie, thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners when it comes to anything we talked about today, or just anything in general?
Sure. I think when you mess up as a parent, if you can pause instead of beating yourself up about it, can you just be curious with yourself? What was I feeling? I wonder what that's telling me about me. Can I be kind to myself instead of hate on myself right now? That will do your child so much more good in the long run if you can treat yourself kindly.
I love that. And then where can our listeners who are listening today, who will listen to this throughout all of time, find more of you and more of your work?
Well, you can visit the Phoenix Effect podcast on any major podcast platform, and my website is courageousstepscounseling.com if you are interested in working with me. I can also do mind body coaching and storywork coaching, so if you're not a resident of Maine or New Hampshire, I can work with you anywhere.
Very cool. And you do offer something really cool that I thought was that you do offer private pay options, correct?
I
Where
do.
it's just individual pay options. So I think that's really cool and a huge benefit. And then you also have different things available to help those work out different payment structures and things like that. I saw on the website, I believe. So it's very open to anyone. There's options available to you. So there's always options. I think that's a big takeaway here. If it's Ellie, if it's someone else, look at their options, find the option that's going to work for you, and don't be afraid to communicate with the person. If you feel like Ellie's going to be a great fit for you based on listening to this, message her, talk to her, be like, hey, this is kind of my situation. This is what it looks like. Be open and honest, because you can't get anywhere if you don't have that open and honest conversation with someone. So that would be my little last piece there. But Ellie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so much fun talking to you. Very insightful. I learned a lot. I definitely overshared today, which was fine. Happy to overshare. But thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, leave your feedback wherever you're watching. If you're watching on YouTube or somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, follow, subscribe, support, do whatever it takes, whatever the buttons are. They're different on all the platforms. I couldn't tell you how many different ones there are. Do the things that you know will support the podcast, and make sure you tune in for our next episode, because it's going to be a good one. And we'll see you next time on the Young Dad Podcast.